Welcome back in the place to be with the CBBC Asset Group. Thank you for being a part of the group. Today we talk about the fight for the future of money with Chris Giancarlo and Sheila Warren. Pay attention to all these Ripple slogans and terminologies that he uses. If you know anything about Ripple and you've listened to Brad Garlinghouse speak, you will see the similarities in what this man is saying.
So it's exclusive, identity only. It's slow. 3 days to cash a check in the United States, 7 days to send money around the world.
Well, it's interesting as you step back and look at this. If you and I decided we were going to send $10,000 to California today, the fastest way for us to do it would be to drive to the airport and fly it there. That's a crazy thing to think about when you're in the age of the internet and we're used to information on demand.
It's faster to, if you need to move money from here to London, to put it in a suitcase and grab a flight to Heathrow than it is to send a wire transfer.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
When we think about the development of new forms of money, the private sector has actually been innovating for a dozen years now. And only in the last 18 months or so has most of the Western central banks sat up and said, whoa, what's going on here? Maybe we've got a role in this. And it was 18 months ago at Davos where we launched the Digital Dollar Project. And our goal with it then and our goal with it now is to make sure the voice of the private sector is brought to bear as central bankers develop central bank digital currency. In my book, I coin a phrase, and it's a phrase that's built upon one that was made by French Premier Georges Clemenceau at the end of World War I. He looked back on the carnage of that war and said, gosh, war is too important to be left to the generals. Well, in a similar way, in my book, I say money, especially digital money, is too important to be left to the central bankers. And I mean no disrespect to central bankers. What I mean to say is that money is as much a social construct as it is a government construct. And society, having been at this now for 12 years, is forming views as to what value should be in money. And central bankers need to take account of that as they move forward in developing central bank digital currency.
We're stuck with this policy by enforcement. I mean, is that a fair criticism? I mean, the folks were just saying that we need greater clarity from the SEC right now, and it still feels ambiguous. Or do you think that there is greater clarity coming from the SEC right now?
No, I don't, quite frankly. And I don't mean to criticize any given agency, but look at it from an innovator's point of view, right? They're trying to innovate with new tokens, with new abilities to transfer value, and all they know from the SEC is we'll call it as we see it, but there's no real good guidelines. There's no bright line tests. There's the 1946 Howey test. I mean, come on, we certainly can do better than that. We certainly can. If we're going to innovate, let's not try to have innovators guess which instruments the SEC might take enforcement action on or not. And now we've got a new class of American innovators that are trying to experiment with this third wave of the Internet of Value. And the best they can get is wait and see whether we sue you or not, and look at the 1946 Supreme Court case and guess whether what you're doing is legal or illegal. I mean, look, I'm not here again to criticize the SEC. They're doing best with what they have, but we really do need some mature guidance on this. And this is where I got the name Crypto Dad, because I said to the Senate Banking Committee, we owe it to the innovators, we owe it to this generation to get this right, to lay down clear guidelines and clear rules so that we can be a leader in this innovation. And so I really feel that we can do better than we're doing now, and I think we owe it to our innovators and our fellow citizens. And ultimately, there's a generational issue here. I think we owe it to the generation that's out there doing extraordinary work to give them at least some guidelines and some regulations that are crypto appropriate, that they can build upon.
So let's talk a bit about the politics here, because one thing you said that's so interesting to me is the fact that the internet came of age, if you will, or came into being during a time when you had a Democratic president and a Republican Congress. And yet there was really this pretty broad spread consensus that this was something we needed to kind of nurture and allow to develop, to the points that you made, right? Why is crypto such a hot potato? Why are we not seeing the same sort of convergence around the approach here?
Look, I really do think it's part of the fact that that Washington has such a big stake in a legacy structure, and it's not just Washington; it's big finance. It is big technology. I think there's a lot of inertia in our current system, and you know what? Give it its due. It served very, very well the dollar's ascendancy, the role of the Federal Reserve, the payment processes are in place. They worked really well in the latter half of the 20th century. The problem is time is moving on. Technology is moving on. The fact that you can send a photograph around the world in a second along with a text message, and it still takes 3 to 5 days to send money around the world at the cost of 5 to 7%. I subtitled my book, The Fight for the Future of Money. I really think we are going to have a fight for the future of money. And some of the contestants in that fight are pretty asynchronous. You're going to have nation states in that fight, both democracies and non-democracies. You're going to have central banks in that fight, some major central banks and some up-and-coming central banks. You're going to have big tech in that fight. You're going to have big finance in that fight. And they all have I think a role to play, and my book is designed to bring a new entrant into that fight that are not engaged, and that is free people in a free society. In this fight for the future of money, ultimately it comes down to what values are going to be enshrined in either central bank digital currency or non-central banks, non-sovereign digital currency. You know, big tech is as censorious of activities as a restrictive government regime. Big tech is as eavesdropping and surveilling of activities as is a non-democratic regime. So the question is going to be, in a democracy or in a non-democracy, what are going to be the values of money, and who are going to be in control of those things? Is the digital money of the future going to be something where our activities are surveilled and perhaps censored? Or is it going to be one where we enjoy what we expect to enjoy in fiat money, and that is economic privacy, at least for legal transactions? What are going to be the values in digital money, whether it's sovereign or non-sovereign? To me, that's the ultimate thing. And I was talking to Senator Lummis recently, and she made an excellent point, and it's a point, Michael, you and I talked about. If the United States, and this is a big if the United States encodes in a digital dollar proper Fourth Amendment protections for information, it will be the killer monetary instrument in the world, and others will then have to adopt privacy as well to compete with it. It'll be the best thing we could possibly do. On the other hand, if we don't do that right, it'll be the worst thing we can do, because everybody will take their cue from the digital dollar, non-sovereign money as well as sovereign, and our information will not be private. So it's exclusive, identity only. It's slow. 3 days to cash a check in the United States, 7 days to send money around the world.
Well, it's interesting as you step back and look at this. If you and I decided we were going to send $10,000 to California today, the fastest way for us to do it would be to drive to the airport and fly it there. That's a crazy thing to think about when you're in the age of the internet, and we're used to information on demand.
It's faster if you need to move money from here to London, to put it in a suitcase and grab a flight to Heathrow than it is to send a wire transfer. So it's exclusive, it's slow, and it's expensive. 5 to 17% to send remittances around the world. That falls on the most vulnerable parts of our population. So the banknote system has got its shortcomings, even though that's what we use today. So here's the beauty of digital money in a token form. It solves those 4 shortcomings. It solves the local nature of the old physical token money, and it solves the exclusivity, the slowness, and the latency of our banknote system. It's really very revolutionary, but boy, does it destroy a lot of latency businesses. Boy, does it destroy a lot of bank P&Ls. Boy, does it undermine, work that the Senate Banking Committee has been doing for the last 30 years. And so it's really disruptive, but it is so potentially positive. We need to view this as an opportunity to modernize our financial system, and not, as unfortunately so many people are doing, as a challenge to everything they've known. And I'll just end with a quote from my favorite author, Douglas Adams, who wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Love him.
He said that for most people, anything that was invented between the age of 17 and 35 is so cool. It's such a remarkable thing and such an opportunity to build a lifetime career. But for anything that's invented after you're 35 is risky, suspect, and needs to be suppressed. And I think that's a lot of what's going on here.
What is the signal that other regulators in other jurisdictions take from China?
Well, I'm not sure they're all taking the signal that I think they should be taking. I think there's a underestimation of the magnitude of what China's looking to do with its ECNY, its digital yuan. I think the misunderstanding is it's just about digital payments. I think it's much, much bigger than that. I think what China views as digital currency as a way to serve as an operating system for the world's first fully networked digital economy. And that's very powerful. What do I mean by that? Well, the first wave of the internet, that Internet of Information, created what is today pretty much a fully networked information system. I can go from this, I'm looking at you right now from my laptop. I can go from this, Sheila, to reading an article you wrote with a few clicks of my mouse. From that, I can look at a podcast that you and Michael have done. I can then go to a New York Times article. I can find a research paper that you've done. I can research a subject without ever leaving the four corners of my desktop. And yet in our financial system, we've got a series of silos. If I want to trade a share of Microsoft on New York Stock Exchange, I talk to a stockbroker. But if I want to put a hedge on an oil trade, I've got to go to a futures commission merchant at the CFTC. If I want to do a commercial loan transaction, I'm talking to another intermediary. We're talking about silo after silo after silo with no digital networking. Now, we have an informal network of say, the dollar zone, where the dollar's influence, I'm using dollars in those different silos, but the dollar doesn't really serve as a digital network. What China views at its ECNY as the key operating system that allows you to go from financial transaction to financial transaction without all the silos, which means without all that cost, with all that latency. So you take the world's fastest growing economy, and now you take out that cost, that latency, that lag, and that will drive that economy into hyperspace or hyperdrive. I mean, it is amazing how they are breaking through this silo effect that we in the West were so squeamish about that. And yet, how powerful that will be. Now, I never overestimate a competitor's ability to execute on a plan, but the audaciousness of the plan is stunning. And we don't seem to even perceive the opportunity in the West, which is what so troubles me.